Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back into the quiet, wooden heart of 18th century Japan, where the air smells like fresh cedar and the only sound is the rhythmic slide of paper across a smooth table. You might imagine that everyone in Edo was a samurai looking for a duel, but in reality, most people were much more worried about whether their fan matched their kimono or if they had enough gold leaf to impress the neighbors. You probably believe that these fans were just simple tools to stay cool on a humid afternoon, but they were actually the smartphones of the era. Portable, social, and very expensive if you drop them in the mud. Before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through. Tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. Also, I love seeing where everyone is listening from, so feel free to leave a comment with your location and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun has even reached the horizon, feeling the cool morning air brush against your skin. The workshop is silent, filled with the faint scent of old wood and the earthy aroma of dried mulberry fibers. Your knees feel a bit stiff as you move across the tatami mats, which make a soft, dry sound beneath your feet. In this era, being an apprentice isn't exactly about high-speed internet or coffee breaks. Instead, your morning begins with the slow, steady preparation of the workspace, ensuring everything is perfect before the master artist arrives. You might think your current morning routine is difficult because the toaster is acting up, but try being responsible for the perfect consistency of rice starch glue before the birds have even started singing. The workshop is a small building nestled in a quiet corner of Edo, the city we now call Tokyo. Outside, the morning mist clings to the low roofs, and the narrow streets are still mostly empty. You can hear the distant, muffled sound of a temple bell, a deep and vibrating tone that seems to travel through the ground itself. You walk over to the large wooden shutters and slide them open with a slow, controlled motion. The wood feels smooth and cool in your hands, polished by years of use. As the light enters the room, you see the dust motes dancing in the air, moving in slow circles like tiny stars. Your first task is to prepare the paper. This isn't the shiny, white paper you find in a modern printer. This is washi, a handmade paper that feels more like a thin, soft fabric than a sheet of stationery. It has a slight texture to it, a gentle roughness that catches the light and gives the fan its soul. Historians still argue whether the specific folding mechanism of these fans originated entirely within Japan or was a gift brought over from a foreign court centuries earlier. But in this moment, all you care about is that the paper is smooth and free of any imperfections. Even a tiny bump in the fiber could ruin a master's brushstroke, and you definitely don't want to be the reason. The master has a bad morning. The masters of Edo could be quite particular, and a grumpy artist is much harder to handle than a grumpy boss on a Monday morning. You sit down on your heels, feeling the familiar pressure in your legs. You take a large sheet of paper and begin to inspect it. You run your fingers over the surface, feeling the delicate fibers of the mulberry bark. This paper is strong yet incredibly light, a balance that is essential for a fan that will be opened and closed thousands of times. If you think about it, making a fan is a bit like building a bridge. It has to be flexible enough to move, but strong enough to hold its shape. You pick up a soft brush and begin to clear away any invisible dust. The motion of the brush is soothing, a repetitive back and forth that helps you clear your mind. The air in the room begins to warm slightly as the sun climbs higher. You can hear the soft rustle of the trees outside and the occasional chirp of a sparrow. You move to the corner where the pigments are kept. These are not little plastic tubes of paint. They are raw minerals and organic materials that must be ground into a fine powder. You see a small bowl of dark, fermented persimmon juice nearby. This liquid is a deep, earthy brown and has a very distinct, slightly sour smell. It is used to treat the paper, making it waterproof and resistant to insects. It is a bit like the ancient version of a protective phone case, though it smells considerably more like an old orchard. You pick up a heavy stone pestle and begin to grind a small amount of charcoal. The sound of the stone against the mortar is a low, rhythmic grinding that fills the quiet room. It is a peaceful sound, one that tells you the day is truly beginning. You watch as the solid black chunks turn into a cloud of dark dust, finer than silk. You have to be careful not to breathe too hard, or you will end up looking like you've spent the morning cleaning a chimney. There is a certain irony in the fact that you spend hours creating such a mess just to produce a piece of art that looks perfectly clean and elegant. As you work, you think about the history of the objects you are creating. Folding fans or sensu have been a staple of Japanese culture for hundreds of years. Everyone has them, from the wealthiest merchants to the humblest laborers. They are used for everything from cooling off to signaling a secret message across a crowded room. You imagine a high-ranking lady in a silk kimono holding a fan you helped create. She might use it to hide a smile or to shade her eyes from the sun. In a way, you are crafting a piece of someone's personality. It is a big responsibility for someone who is currently covered in charcoal dust and really wants a snack. The master artist arrives soon, his footsteps making a measured, deliberate sound on the porch. He doesn't say a word, but his presence fills the room with a sense of purpose. You move quickly to set out his brushes and the freshly prepared paper. The master is an old man with hands that look like gnarled tree roots. Yet when he picks up a brush, he moves with the grace of a dancer. You watch him as he sits, his back perfectly straight, his breathing slow and rhythmic. He looks at the paper you have prepared, his eyes scanning for any flaw. For a moment, you hold your breath, wondering if you missed a tiny speck of dust. He nods once, a small movement that feels like a massive victory. He begins to prepare his ink, mixing the charcoal powder you ground with a small amount of water and glue. The way the ink swirls in the stone tray is hypnotic, dark ribbons of color dancing in the clear liquid. You find yourself leaning in closer, captivated by the process. This is the heart of the workshop, the place where raw materials become something beautiful. You feel a sense of pride, knowing that your morning of quiet labor has allowed this moment to happen. It is a slow process, one that cannot be rushed. In a world that often feels like it's moving at 100 miles an hour, there is something deeply comforting about the deliberate pace of the workshop. You realize that the master's tools are like extensions of his own body. Each brush has a specific purpose, some made of fine deer hair for soft lines, others of stiff horse hair for bold strokes. You have spent months learning the names and uses of each one, a task that felt like learning a second language. Sometimes you feel like you are just a glorified brush cleaner, but you know that even the smallest task is part of a larger tradition. It is like being a tiny gear in a very large, very beautiful clock. The master begins his first stroke of the day. He doesn't hesitate. The brush meets the paper with a soft, sliding sound, leaving behind a trail of deep, rich black. It is a simple line, but it has a weight and a life to it that is hard to describe. You watch as a mountain begins to emerge from the blank space. Then a pine tree, then a distant bird. It is as if he is pulling the image out of the paper itself. You forget about your stiff knees and the charcoal on your face. You are lost in the flow of the creation. As the morning progresses, the workshop becomes a place of intense focus. The only sounds are the rustle of the master's silk sleeves and the occasional dip of a brush into water. You move around him like a shadow, anticipating his needs before he even speaks. You bring him more water, you move the drying fans, you keep the space tidy. It is a dance of cooperation, one that has been performed by apprentices and masters for generations. You feel a deep connection to those who came before you, the thousands of hands that have prepared paper and ground ink in this city. A quirky fact that always makes you smile is that some of these fans were actually designed to be used by samurai as weapons. Known as tessen, these fans had iron ribs and could be used for defense, or even as a club if things got a bit rowdy. You imagine someone trying to fan themselves with a heavy iron fan and accidentally giving themselves a workout. It is a funny thought, especially when you look at the delicate paper fans currently sitting in front of you. Most of the fans you make are far more peaceful, designed to bring a bit of beauty and a cool breeze to a hot afternoon. You notice a small tray of gold leaf sitting on the side table. This is one of the most difficult materials to work with. The sheets of gold are so thin that even a gentle sigh could blow them away. You have to handle them with bamboo tweezers, moving with extreme care. The gold catches the light and shimmers with a soft, warm glow. It adds a touch of luxury to the fan, making it sparkle when it is opened in the sun. You remember the first time you tried to handle gold leaf. You accidentally breathed too hard, and the entire sheet ended up stuck to your nose. The master hadn't been amused, but you can laugh about it now, even if you still feel a bit of nerves whenever you have to touch the stuff. The city of Edo is waking up around you now. You can hear the sounds of street vendors calling out their wares and the clatter of wooden sandals on the stones outside. It is a busy, vibrant world, but inside the workshop, the atmosphere remains calm and focused. You feel like you are in a bubble of peace, protected from the chaos of the outside world. The master continues his work, his hands steady and his mind clear. You realize that this is what it means to be an artist, to find a moment of stillness in the middle of a bustling city. You spend the next hour carefully folding a finished sheet of paper. This is a delicate process that requires a sharp eye and a steady hand. You have to follow the lines of the painting, ensuring that the folds don't ruin the image. The paper resists slightly, then gives way with a soft, crisp sound. You move slowly, one fold at a time, until the flat sheet has become a compact, elegant accordion. It is a transformation that never fails to amaze you. You have taken a piece of a tree and some charcoal and turned it into an object that can be carried in a sleeve. The light in the room is changing as the sun moves across the sky. The shadows are getting longer, and the air is becoming a bit warmer. You take a moment to look at your hands. They are stained with ink and dust, but they feel strong. You are learning a craft that takes a lifetime to master, and you are only at the beginning of your journey. There is a certain comfort in knowing that you don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to keep preparing the paper, grinding the ink, and watching the master. You think about the people who will eventually own these fans. Maybe a merchant will use one to calculate his profits, or a young girl will use one to hide her blushes during a festival. These fans will see things you will never see and travel to places you will never go. They are like little messengers from the workshop, carrying a bit of your hard work out into the world. It is a nice thought to hold on to as you continue your tasks. As the first section of your day comes to an end, you feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. The workshop is ready, the master is working, and the paper is waiting. You take a deep breath, feeling the calm air fill your lungs. The world is full of noise and hurry, but here, in this small room in Edo, everything is exactly as it should be. You are ready for whatever the next hour brings, whether it is more charcoal to grind or more gold leaf to handle. You are an apprentice in the city of Edo, and your journey has just begun. You hear the master set down his brush, a soft click against the ceramic rest. He looks at you for a moment, and you see a flicker of something that might be approval in his eyes. It is enough to keep you going for the rest of the day. You bow slightly, a gesture of respect that feels natural and right. The traditions of the workshop are your guide, and you are happy to follow them. The sun continues its slow climb, and the city of Edo continues its busy day. But for now, you are exactly where you need to be. The process of making these fans is not just about the final product, it is about the journey of creating it. Every step, from the morning mist to the final brushstroke, is important. You have learned that patience is just as important as skill, and that the quiet moments are often the most productive. You look forward to the hours ahead, knowing that you are part of something special. The paper is soft, the ink is dark, and the story of the you step out of the cool, shaded sanctuary of the workshop and into the bright, golden light of the Edo morning. The transition from the smell of ink and old wood to the vibrant, chaotic scent of the city is like waking up a second time. The air in Nihonbashi is thick with the aroma of grilled eel, salt from the nearby bay, and the sharp, clean scent of fresh pine used in new construction. You adjust the strap of the wooden box you are carrying, which contains several finished fans wrapped carefully in soft cloth. Moving through these streets is a skill in itself, a slow motion dance where you navigate around peddlers, barking dogs, and the occasional high-ranking official being carried in a palanquin. You might think your local shopping mall is busy on a holiday weekend, but it has nothing on the commercial heart of 18th century Japan, where everyone seems to be in a hurry to get somewhere very important, or at least look like they are. Your destination is the great Nihonbashi Bridge, the literal center of the Japanese world. It is a massive wooden structure, arched gracefully over the canal, and from this point, every distance in the country is measured. This is a mainstream historical fact that every traveler knows, as the bridge serves as the starting point for the 5 major highways leading out of the city. You feel the vibration of the bridge beneath your feet as hundreds of people cross it simultaneously. The sound of wooden sandals, or geta, hitting the thick planks creates a low, rhythmic drumming that echoes over the water. It is a steady, grounding sound, like a giant wooden heart beating at the center of the city. You take a moment to lean against the railing, feeling the smooth, weathered grain of the timber under your palms. Below you, the canal is filled with flat-bottomed boats carrying everything from barrels of sake to crates of white radishes. The heat of the day is beginning to rise, and you notice how the fashion of the city changes as the temperature climbs. Almost every person you see has a fan tucked into their obi, the wide silk belt that holds their kimono in place. It is a fascinating sight to see how a simple object from your workshop becomes a part of the city's living tapestry. You see a merchant stop to wipe his brow, pulling out a sturdy, rigid fan made of thick paper and bamboo. These uchiwa fans are the workhorses of the city, used for everything from stoking kitchen fires to shooing away persistent flies. They are decorated with bold, colorful prints of famous landscapes or popular actors, making them the affordable posters of the Edo period. If you think the influencer culture of today is new, you would be surprised to find that people in Edo were just as obsessed with their favorite celebrities, often buying fans just because a certain kabuki actor was depicted on the paper. As you walk further into the market district, the shops begin to crowd closer together, their colorful fabric banners snapping softly in the breeze. You pass a shop specializing in fine silks, where the fabrics are laid out like rows of fallen rainbows. The colors are so bright they almost make your eyes ache: deep indigos, vibrant vermilions, and soft moss greens. You notice a group of young women gathered near the entrance, whispering and laughing behind their folding fans. The way they hold the fans is a language of its own. A fan held half open might suggest a secret, while a fan snapped shut with a sharp motion can end a conversation more effectively than any spoken word. Historians still argue whether the surge in fan production was driven primarily by aesthetic demand or by the practical necessity of navigating the city's increasingly crowded and humid summer streets. Looking at the sweating crowds, you suspect it might be a bit of both, with a heavy emphasis on not wanting to look like a wilted vegetable in public. You find a small bit of shade under a willow tree near the water's edge and take a breath. The long, thin branches of the willow sweep the ground like green silk ribbons, and the air here is a few degrees cooler. You watch a group of children playing nearby, their small wooden toys clattering on the stones. One of them has a cheap paper fan that has seen better days, the paper torn and the bamboo ribs sticking out at odd angles. It reminds you of the precision required in your workshop. If a fan isn't made perfectly, it won't survive the rough and tumble life of the city for long. You feel a quiet sense of pride, knowing that the fans in your box are built to last, with every fold and every drop of glue applied with the utmost care. It is a strange feeling to be an invisible part of so many people's lives, providing them with a small piece of portable shade and beauty. A quirky tidbit that often catches travelers off guard is that these fans were frequently used as cheat sheets or even maps for the city, because the streets of Edo could be a confusing maze of narrow alleys and dead ends. Some clever entrepreneurs started printing simplified maps directly onto the paper of the fans. You could look like you were just casually cooling yourself, while secretly trying to figure out where the nearest noodle shop was located. It was the original version of trying to read a GPS on your phone while walking, though much more stylish and far less likely to result in you walking into a lamp post. You imagine a tourist from the countryside standing on the Nihonbashi bridge, frantically fanning themselves, while squinting at the tiny lines representing the local canals. You continue your walk toward the shop, where you are supposed to deliver the master's latest work. The street is a sensory overload in the best possible way. You pass a fishmonger who is shouting about the freshness of his catch, the silvery scales of the fish glistening in the sun. Further down, a man is selling roasted chestnuts, the sweet, smoky smell drifting through the air and making your stomach growl. You realize you haven't eaten since your very early breakfast, and the sight of a nearby sushi stall is incredibly tempting. In Edo, sushi is a fast food, served as large bowls of vinegared rice topped with fresh slices of fish, meant to be eaten on the go. You watch a samurai stop at the stall, his two swords tucked into his belt, as he gracefully picks up a piece of tuna and eats it in one bite. Even in the middle of a busy market, there is a sense of ritual and grace in how people move and eat. The humidity is starting to settle over the city like a heavy, damp blanket. This is the kind of weather that makes you appreciate the cooling power of a well-made fan. You see people from all walks of life using them rhythmically, 1,000 tiny movements creating a collective breeze. The sound of a folding fan opening is a distinctive, crisp snap that cuts through the ambient noise of the market. It is a satisfying sound, one that signals a moment of relief. You think about the struggle of wearing multiple layers of silk in 90% humidity, and you have a newfound respect for the people of Edo. They manage to look incredibly elegant, while essentially being wrapped in several heavy blankets during a heat wave. It is a testament to the power of fashion and perhaps a bit of stubbornness. You finally reach the fan merchant's shop, a beautiful building with a dark wooden facade and a large sign painted with an elegant fan motif. Inside, the shop is quiet and cool, a welcome relief from the sun. The walls are lined with wooden racks displaying hundreds of fans, ranging from simple paper ones to exquisite masterpieces decorated with gold leaf and intricate calligraphy. The air smells of sandalwood and dried paper, a scent that immediately makes you feel at ease. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with a sharp eye and a gentle smile, greets you with a deep bow. He takes the wooden box from you with both hands, treating it as if it contains a treasure, which, in a way, it does. You watch as he carefully unpacks the fans one by one. He opens each one slowly, listening to the sound of the paper and checking the tension of the bamboo ribs. He holds one up to the light, admiring the master's brushwork. The painting depicts a single branch of cherry blossoms against a pale blue sky, a scene that feels like a breath of fresh air. You feel a sense of accomplishment seeing the final product in such a beautiful setting. The merchant nods in approval, his eyes twinkling. He knows that these fans will be sold to the city's elite, people who value the subtle details that only a master can provide. You are just the apprentice who ground the ink and prepared the paper, but you know that without your work, this beauty wouldn't exist. As you wait for the merchant to prepare the payment and a receipt for the master, you wander around the shop. You see a display of fans intended for the tea ceremony, which are much smaller and more understated. These fans are never used for cooling. Instead, they are placed on the mat in front of a guest as a sign of respect and to create a symbolic boundary between people. It is another example of how deeply embedded the fan is in the culture of Japan. It is a tool, a fashion statement, a map, a weapon, and a symbol of etiquette all at once. You wonder how many other objects in the world carry so much weight and meaning. The cost of some of the high-end fans in the shop is staggering, easily the equivalent of several months' worth of rice for a normal family. They are the luxury brand items of the 1750s, sought after by wealthy merchants and high-ranking officials who want to show off their taste and wealth. You see a fan decorated with real silver thread and tiny pieces of pearl that shimmer like the surface of the sea. It is incredibly beautiful. But you can't help but think about how nervous you would be actually using it. Dropping a fan like that in the mud would be a social and financial disaster of epic proportions. You imagine someone trying to look cool and sophisticated at a garden party, only to have their expensive fan fly out of their hand and land in a bowl of soup. With the business concluded, you step back out into the bustling street. The sun is now at its peak, and the shadows have shrunk to small patches of dark blue at the base of the buildings. You decide to take a slightly different route, back to the workshop, passing through a district known for its bookshops and printmakers. This area is quieter, with the smell of fresh ink being even stronger than in your workshop. You see rows of woodblock prints hanging to dry, their colors vibrant and sharp. Many of these prints depict the very scenes the master paints on the fans: mountains, rivers, and the delicate beauty of the changing seasons. It is a reminder that you are part of a massive artistic community, a city of creators who are all working to capture the fleeting beauty of the floating world. You pass a small shrine nestled between two large warehouses. A stone fox statue sits at the entrance, wearing a red bib that has faded in the sun. You stop for a moment to bow, feeling a sense of gratitude for the day. The world of Edo is loud, crowded, and sometimes overwhelming, but it is also full of small moments of peace and beauty. You watch a dragonfly land on the fox's ear, its wings shimmering like tiny panes of glass. It stays there for a moment before darting away, a streak of blue against the gray stone. You realize that your work is a lot like that dragonfly, a small, beautiful thing that exists for a moment, bringing a bit of wonder to whoever sees it. As you walk back toward the bridge, you see a group of travelers from the north, their straw hats and sturdy sandals covered in the dust of the road. They look exhausted but excited as they catch their first glimpse of the Nihonbashi bridge. For them, this is the end of a long journey, and the beginning of a new adventure. You feel a sense of connection to them, even though you have never met. You are all travelers in this city, moving through its streets and contributing to its story in your own way. You adjust your empty wooden box, which feels much lighter now, and begin the walk back to the quiet workshop. The sound of the market begins to fade as you move away from the central district. The shouting of the vendors and the clatter of the carts are replaced by the softer sounds of the residential neighborhoods. You hear the sound of a woman singing a lullaby to her child, and the distant rhythmic thud of someone pounding grain. These are the sounds of daily life, the steady background noise that keeps the city moving. You find yourself walking in time with the sounds, your steps light and easy. The heat is still there, but it feels less oppressive now that your task is done. You think about the master, probably still sitting in the workshop, his brush moving across a fresh sheet of paper. He is a man of few words, but through his art, he speaks to thousands of people. You wonder if you will ever be able to capture the world as he does, with a few strokes of ink and a bit of color. For now, you are content to be the one who makes it possible for him to work. There is a quiet dignity in being a craftsman, in knowing how to handle materials with respect and how to create something that brings joy to others. You cross the bridge one last time, looking down at the water. The reflections of the clouds are dancing on the surface, broken by the ripples of the passing boats. The city of Edo is a place of constant motion, always changing and always staying the same. You feel a sense of belonging here, in this city of fans and bridges and floating worlds. As you turn the corner and see the familiar roof of the workshop, you feel a sense of coming home. The morning was full of light and noise, but the afternoon promises the quiet, steady rhythm of creation once again. You slide open the door, feeling the cool air of the interior wrap around you like a familiar garment. The master looks up from his work, his expression unreadable, but you know he is glad to have his apprentice back. You set down the box, take off your sandals, and prepare to start the next task, ready to turn the experiences of the morning into the art of the afternoon. The journey through the markets of Nihonbashi has left you tired but inspired. You have seen how your work fits into the larger world, and you have felt the pulse of the city in every step. It is a reminder that even the smallest object, like a paper fan, can be a bridge between people, a tool for survival, and a piece of history. You settle back onto your mats, the familiar scent of mulberry paper and ink grounding you. The world outside will continue its busy dance, but here, in the quiet heart of the workshop, you are ready to fold the next piece of paper and grind the next bit of charcoal, continuing the cycle that has defined your life and the life of this city for generations. The afternoon sun begins to tilt, casting long, golden fingers of light across the workshop floor. The bustling energy of the market feels like a distant memory now, replaced by a deep, resonant quiet that seems to vibrate in the very air. You move toward the back of the house, where the garden offers a small patch of green sanctuary. Here, a fresh bundle of bamboo stalks waits for you, leaning against the weathered stone wall. They are a vibrant, waxy green, smelling of damp earth and the cool, hidden depths of a mountain forest. You run your hand along one of the stalks, feeling the cool, smooth surface and the hard, raised ridges of the nodes This is the skeleton of the fan, the hidden structure that gives the delicate paper its strength and its movement. Without these bones, the most beautiful painting in the world would be nothing more than a limp rag. You might think that choosing a piece of wood is a simple task, but in the world of Edo craftsmanship, it is a high-stakes game of physics and patience. If you pick a stalk that is too young, it will warp as it dries. Pick one that is too old, and it will shatter like glass the moment you try to bend it. It is a bit like trying to pick the perfect avocado at the grocery store. Only your entire career and the master's reputation are riding on the outcome. You carry the bundle back inside and sit on a low wooden bench. Your tools are laid out before you, their steel blades gleaming with a faint, oily sheen. The most important is a heavy, short-handled knife with a blade so sharp it seems to cut the air itself. You take a deep breath, letting the calm of the room settle into your bones. The process of splitting bamboo is a rhythmic, almost meditative act. You position the blade at the top of a cut segment, your thumb pressing firmly against the back of the steel. With a steady, controlled pressure, you push down. You hear the sharp, clear report of the wood parting, a clean sound that echoes through the silent room. There is no jagged tearing, only a smooth, surgical separation of fibers. You watch as the stalk splits into two perfect halves, revealing the pale, creamy interior that has been hidden from the light until this very moment. It is a satisfying feeling, a sense of order being created from the raw chaos of nature. The variety of bamboo you are using is known as madake, or timber bamboo, which is a mainstream historical fact prized by craftsmen for its incredible flexibility and long fibers. It is the gold standard for fan making because it can be split into strips as thin as a blade of grass without losing its integrity. You continue the process, splitting each half into quarters, then eighths, then sixteenths. Each motion must be identical to the last. Your hands move with a memory of their own, a biological habit formed through months of repetition and more than a few accidental nicks to your fingertips. You notice the way the light catches the fine, hair-like fibers of the inner wood. They shimmer with a silken quality, almost like the very paper they will eventually support. Historians still argue whether the invention of the folding fan was inspired by the complex folding of a bat's wing, or if it was a purely mathematical evolution of the earlier, rigid hand screens. Looking at the way the bamboo ribs begin to fan out in your hand, the bat wing theory feels almost plausible, though perhaps a bit more Gothic than the elegant reality of your workspace. As the pile of thin bamboo strips grows beside you, you feel the familiar ache in your forearms. It is a dull, heavy sensation, but not an unpleasant one. It is the feeling of work being done, of a physical connection to the materials of your world. You think about how much of our modern lives is spent touching plastic and glass, smooth surfaces that tell us nothing about where they came from. Here, every piece of bamboo has a story. You can see the slight variations in the grain, the tiny marks where a branch once grew, or the subtle color shifts caused by the soil in which it stood. A quirky tidbit you learned early on is that some fan makers would actually soak these ribs in a mixture of strong green tea, or, in more eccentric workshops, other organic liquids to darken the wood and make it more resistant to the humid Japanese summers. You stick to the traditional methods, preferring the natural, clean look of the treated wood. But the idea of tea, soaked fans always makes you think of a very large, very woody cup of breakfast. Next comes the delicate task of carving the pivot, or kaname. This is the small hole at the base of the fan where all the ribs meet, held together by a tiny pin. If this hole is even a fraction of a millimeter off, the fan will never open smoothly. It will catch and stumble, ruining the elegant snap that customers expect. You use a small, pointed awl to slowly bore into the base of the stacked ribs. You move with extreme caution, feeling the resistance of the wood. The sound is a tiny, high-pitched rasp, a miniature version of a saw cutting through a giant log. You imagine the ribs as a group of people, all trying to lean through a single doorway at the same time. Without perfect organization, there will only be a jam. You find yourself holding your breath, your focus narrowing down to that single point of contact. When the awl finally breaks through the last layer, you feel a surge of relief. It is a small victory, but in the world of the fan maker, small victories are the only ones that matter. You begin to sand the edges of the ribs using the dried, abrasive skin of a shark or a piece of rough horsetail plant. This is a slow, tedious process designed to ensure that there are no splinters or sharp edges that could snag the master's delicate silk or the fragile washi paper. You run the wood back and forth, feeling the friction generate a soft warmth against your skin. The dust produced is fine and white, coating your hands like a layer of pale flour. You might think this is the kind of task that could be automated, but there is a nuance to the touch that no machine could replicate. You are looking for a specific kind of smoothness, a texture that feels almost like bone or polished stone. As you work, your mind wanders to the iron, ribbed fans of the samurai you thought about earlier. Those Tesson fans required a completely different kind of skeleton, one forged in fire and hammered on an anvil. Your work is much quieter, but it requires a different kind of strength, the strength of patience and the willingness to do the same motion 1,000 times until it is perfect. The shadows in the room are growing longer now, turning the pale wood to a deep amber color. You take a moment to assemble the skeleton temporarily, sliding a thin wooden pin through the pivot hole. You spread the ribs out, watching them expand into a perfect semicircle. It is a beautiful thing, even without the paper. The geometry of it is perfect, a series of radiating lines that seem to reach out toward the edges of the room. You can feel the springiness of the bamboo, the way it wants to move and flex. It is a living thing even now, responding to the touch of your hand and the movement of the air. You imagine the finished fan in the hand of a dancer, the ribs providing the necessary tension for every dramatic gesture. In the theater of Edo, a fan isn't just a prop. It is an extension of the actor's body, used to represent anything from a falling leaf to a rising moon. The irony of your work is that if you do it perfectly, no one will ever actually notice it. The user will only see the beautiful painting of the master, the gold leaf, and the elegant calligraphy. They will feel the cool breeze, but they won't think about the hours you spent splitting stalks or the precision of the pivot hole. You are the architect of the invisible, providing the foundation for someone else's glory. There is a certain quiet dignity in that, a lack of ego that is common among the craftsmen of this city. You are part of a lineage, a chain of apprentices who have all sat on this same bench, feeling the same ache in their arms and the same satisfaction in a clean split. If you think about it, the fans are like the people of Edo themselves, outwardly decorative and refined, but built on a hidden structure of discipline and resilience. You notice a small pile of discarded bamboo shavings on the floor, curled like ringlets of hair. They are so light that they drift across the mats whenever you move. You pick one up, marveling at how thin it is, almost translucent when held up to the light. It is a reminder of the fragility of the materials you are working with. One wrong move, one moment of distraction, and hours of work can be undone. You have to stay present, focusing on the sensation of the knife and the sound of the wood. This is why the workshop is so quiet. Noise is a distraction, a break in the flow of the craft. You realize that your breathing has synced up with the rhythm of your work, a slow, steady inhale as you position the blade, and a long, smooth exhale as you push. As you finish the final rib for the set, you feel a deep sense of calm. The stack of bones sits before you uniform and ready for the next stage of the process. You think about the master, who is likely starting to think about the pigments he will use for these specific fans. He will look at the skeleton you have built and know exactly how much weight the paper can carry. It is a silent dialogue between the two of you, spoken through the medium of wood and paper. You might not have the master's eye for color or his hand for calligraphy yet, but you have the hands of a builder. You are the one who ensures that the art has a place to land. You hear the soft rustle of the master's kimono as he walks past the doorway, heading toward the kitchen for a cup of tea. He doesn't stop, but he glances at your workbench. You see him take in the neat stack of ribs and the clean workspace. He gives a small, almost imperceptible nod before continuing on his way. In the world of Edo apprenticeship, that nod is the equivalent of a standing ovation. You feel a warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with the afternoon sun. It is the feeling of being seen, of knowing that your contribution is valued, even if it remains hidden under layers of silk and gold. The light is fading now, turning the garden outside into a landscape of deep blues and grays. You begin to pack away your tools, wiping the blades with an oily cloth to protect them from the night air. Each tool goes back into its specific place, a ritual that marks the end of this part of the day. You sweep the bamboo shavings into a small pile, their soft rustling sound the only noise in the room. The workshop feels different in the twilight, more mysterious and full of shadows. You look at the bundle of bamboo stalks that are still waiting to be split, their green skins now looking almost black. There is always more work to be done, another skeleton to build, another fan to bring to life. You think about the history of bamboo in Japan, how it is used for everything from scaffolding to flutes to the very fans you are making. It is a symbol of strength and flexibility, a plant that bends but does not break. It is the perfect metaphor for the spirit of the people living in this era, navigating the complex social structures and the rapid changes of the city. You feel a sense of connection to the plant itself, a respect for its utility and its beauty. You are not just using it, you are collaborating with it, coaxing it into a new form while respecting its inherent nature. As you stand up and stretch, you feel the stiffness in your back and legs. You walk over to the window and look out at the city. The first lanterns are being lit. They're warm, flickering light reflecting in the dark waters of the nearby canal. The city of Edo never truly sleeps, but it does change its pace. The frantic energy of the morning market has given way to the more relaxed, social atmosphere of the evening. People are heading to bathhouses, to restaurants, or simply home to their families, and in many of their sleeves there is a fan, perhaps one that was made in a workshop just like this one, built on a skeleton of bamboo split by an apprentice just like you. You realize that your work is a bridge between the natural world of the bamboo forest and the refined world of the city. You take something raw and wild and turn it into something structured and elegant. It is a process of refinement, of stripping away the unnecessary until only the essential remains. This is the heart of the Japanese aesthetic, the beauty of simplicity, and the power of the hidden. You feel a deep sense of peace, knowing that you are a part of this tradition. The night is coming, and with it, the chance to rest and dream of the next day's work. But for now, you linger in the quiet workshop, surrounded by the scent of wood and the promise of art. The skeleton of the fan is complete. It is strong, flexible, and perfectly balanced. Tomorrow, it will be married to the paper, and the master's vision will begin to take shape. But tonight, it is just bamboo, carved and shaped by your hands, waiting in the darkness. You feel a sense of pride in its quiet perfection. It doesn't need to shout to be important. It just needs to be there, supporting the beauty that will eventually cover it. You take one last look at the stack of ribs before sliding the door shut, leaving the workshop to the silence of the night. The journey of the fan continues, and you are ready for the next step, your hands steady and your heart at ease in the timeless rhythm of Edo. The evening light has turned a deep, bruised purple outside the paper screens, and the workshop is now illuminated by the soft, warm glow of a single oil lamp. The flame flickers gently, casting long, dancing shadows that make the wooden beams of the ceiling look like the ribs of a giant, sleeping whale. You feel a familiar sense of peace settling over you, the kind of quiet that only comes after a long day of physical labor. Your back is a little sore from the hours spent splitting bamboo. But now the work shifts from the structural to the ethereal. The master has signaled that it is time to prepare the colors, and this is a task that requires a different kind of focus. One that is part chemistry, part art, and a little bit of magic. You might think that getting paint is as simple as walking into a shop and picking out a tube of sunset orange. But in Edo, if you want a color, you usually have to find a rock and convince it to turn into a liquid. It is a slow, rhythmic process that feels less like work and more like a quiet conversation with the earth itself. You reach for a small, ceramic pot containing the nikawa, or animal glue. This is the secret ingredient that holds the entire world of Japanese painting together. It is made from simmering the hides and bones of deer or cattle until they release a thick, protein-rich gelatin. When it is cold, it looks like a translucent, amber-colored jelly. But as you place the pot over a tiny charcoal brazier, it begins to melt into a clear, sticky liquid. The smell is earthy and slightly pungent. A mainstream historical fact is that the quality of your glue often determined the longevity of the fan, as poor glue would crack in the winter or mold in the summer. You might find the scent a bit like a wet dog that has been rolling in old leather but to an apprentice, it is the smell of progress. It is a reminder that art in this era is not just about beauty. It is about the raw, sometimes messy materials of the natural world. If you think your modern craft glue is a hassle because it sticks to your fingers, try managing a pot of boiling animal parts while trying to maintain the grace of a Zen monk. While the glue warms, you turn your attention to the pigments. These are not synthetic dyes created in a lab. They are minerals, shells, and insects, each with its own personality and history. You pick up a heavy, smooth stone pestle and a small mortar made of white porcelain. Today, the master requires gunjo, a brilliant, deep blue made from crushed azurite. The raw stone is a vibrant, electric blue that looks like a piece of the sky has fallen and hardened into a rock. You begin to grind the stone, moving the pestle in a steady, circular motion. The sound of the stone against the porcelain is a low, gritty rasp, a soothing white noise that fills the quiet workshop. Historians still argue whether the most vibrant blues of this period were strictly sourced from local Japanese mines, or if rare pigments were being smuggled in through the Dutch trading post at Dejima, despite the strict isolationist laws. You can feel the resistance of the stone as it slowly breaks apart, turning from hard chunks into a coarse sand, and finally into a powder as fine as silk. Next, you prepare the gofen, the brilliant white that gives the fans their luminosity. This pigment is made from the ground-up shells of weathered oysters. A quirky or fringed tidbit about gofen is that the best quality white paint comes from shells that have been left outside to bake in the sun and rain for at least 10 years. The elements break down the organic matter, leaving only the purest calcium carbonate behind. You take a handful of these ancient, bleached shells and begin the long process of grinding them into a paste. It feels a bit ironic to be spending your evening meticulously pulverizing seashells when you would much rather be at a stall in Nihonbashi eating the oysters that used to live in them. But as the white powder begins to glow in the lamplight, you understand why the wait is necessary. This white doesn't just sit on the paper. It reflects light from within, making the clouds and cherry blossoms on the fan look like they are vibrating with life. The rhythm of the grinding is hypnotic. You find your breathing slowing down, matching the circular motion of your arm. Your mind drifts back to the charcoal dust from the first section of our story, remembering how messy and dark it was compared to these vibrant minerals. You are essentially a chef for the eyes, mixing ingredients that have been pulled from the mountains and the sea. You add a few drops of the warm Nikawa glue to the blue powder, using a small glass rod to stir it. The powder resists at first, floating on the surface like tiny blue islands, but eventually it yields, turning into a rich, velvety liquid. You have to get the ratio exactly right. Too much glue, and the paint will be shiny and plastic. Looking too little, and the color will flake off the paper the first time someone fans themselves too vigorously. It is a delicate balance, much like trying to find the perfect temperature for a bath. 1 degree off, and the whole experience changes. Now comes the part of the evening that always makes your heart beat a little faster, the gold. The master produces a small, lacquered box, and as he opens the lid, the lamplight catches a shimmer so bright it seems to pierce through the shadows. Inside are sheets of gold leaf, beaten so thin that they are practically translucent. In Edo, Japan, gold was more than just currency. It was a way to capture the sun. Because the interiors of Japanese houses were often dark, with deep eaves and small windows, the use of gold on fans and screens was a practical way to bounce light around the room. You watch as the master uses a pair of long, thin bamboo tweezers to lift a single sheet. You hold your breath, literally, because even a soft exhale would send the gold flying across the room like a metallic butterfly. Remember that time you accidentally got gold leaf stuck to your nose. You are determined not to repeat that particular fashion disaster tonight. The application of gold leaf is a test of nerves. The master applies a thin layer of the warm glue to a specific area of the painted paper, perhaps a stylized cloud or the shimmering surface of a river. He then hovers the gold leaf over the spot. There is a moment of pure tension, a silence so thick you can hear the oil sizzling in the lamp. With a movement so subtle you almost miss it, he allows the leaf to settle onto the paper. It doesn't land so much as it merges with the surface. He then uses a soft, dry brush made of squirrel hair to gently press the gold down, smoothing out any tiny wrinkles. The sound is a faint, papery whisper, like the sound of a dry leaf skittering across a stone path. The transformation is instant. What was once a simple painting now has a focal point of intense, radiant heat. It is a reminder that even in a world of shadows, there is always a place for a little bit of brilliance. Sometimes, instead of solid sheets, the master uses sunago, or gold dust. To create this, you take the scraps of gold leaf and place them inside a small bamboo tube with a fine wire mesh at one end. You then use a brush to flick the tube, causing a rain of tiny gold specks to fall onto the wet glue. It looks like a miniature snowstorm of light. You imagine you are creating a tiny galaxy on the surface of the fan, a constellation of stars that will only be seen when the owner opens the fan in the right light. This technique is often used to represent mist or the fading light of a sunset. It is a much more forgiving process than applying the solid sheets, but it still requires a steady hand and a lack of sneezing. You find yourself wondering if there is a secret graveyard of lost gold dust somewhere under the floorboards of the workshop, a hidden treasure of all the tiny flecks that drifted away over the centuries. As you work, the master begins to paint a scene of a moonlit autumn field. He uses the deep blue you ground earlier for the night sky, and the white gofen for the pampas grass. The gold is saved for a large, perfectly round harvest moon that sits at the top of the fan's curve. You watch his brush move with a confidence that only comes from decades of repetition. He doesn't use a sketch or a guide. The image is already alive in his mind, and the brush is simply the tool that lets it out. You realize that the colors you prepared are the voices he uses to tell his story. The blue speaks of the cool night air, the white speaks of the rustling grass, and the gold speaks of the timeless light that watches over everything. It is a beautiful, silent performance, and you have a front row seat. A light joke among apprentices is that the master can see a single hair out of place from across the room, but he can never seem to find his own teacup. You notice it sitting cold and forgotten near the pigment trays, a tiny drowned fly floating in the green liquid. You quietly replace it with a fresh, steaming cup, the scent of toasted rice from the genmaicha tea mixing with the earthy smell of the glue. The master doesn't say thank you. He doesn't need to. The rhythm of the workshop is built on these small, unspoken exchanges. You provide the materials and the environment, and he provides the vision. It is a partnership that transcends words, a shared commitment to making something that will outlast both of you. You feel a sense of belonging that is deeper than any you've felt before. You aren't just an employee. You are a guardian of a tradition. The cost of these pigments is another thing that occupies your mind as you clean the mortar. A single small jar of the best cinnabar, used for a deep, vibrant red, could cost as much as a new kimono. The minerals are often transported over mountains and across seas, changing hands many times before they reach your small workshop. You handle them with the same respect you would give to a precious gem. You think about the irony of the floating world, of Edo, a culture obsessed with the fleeting, temporary beauties of life, yet willing to spend a fortune on pigments made from rocks that took millions of years to form. It is a contradiction that seems very Japanese, the marriage of the permanent and the ephemeral. The fan will eventually wear out, the paper will tear, and the bamboo will break. But the minerals will remain, as vibrant as the day they were pulled from the earth. You take a moment to look at your hands. They are stained with blue and white, with tiny flecks of gold caught in the creases of your skin. You look like you've been wrestling with a rainbow and lost. But there is a pride in these stains. They are the marks of a craftsman, a physical record of the day's work. You remember the high-ranking officials you saw in the market earlier, with their clean, soft hands and their expensive silks. They might own the fans, but they will never know the satisfaction of creating the colors. They will never know the specific weight of an azurite stone or the way the glue feels when it reaches the perfect temperature. You wouldn't trade your stained hands for their silk sleeves for anything in the world. The master finishes the last stroke of the moon and sets his brush down. The painting needs to dry slowly in the cool air of the evening. If it dries too fast, the paint might crack, too slow, and the colors might bleed into each other. You move the finished sheets to a drying rack, handling them with the care you would give to a sleeping infant. The gold leaf shimmered even in the low light, looking like a real moon trapped on a piece of paper. You feel a wave of exhaustion hit you, a heavy, comfortable weight that makes your eyelids feel like lead. The day is finally coming to an end, and the workshop is ready to be put to bed. You begin the process of tidying up, a ritual that is just as important as the painting itself. You wash the brushes in clear, cool water, making sure every trace of pigment is removed. You have to be gentle. If you pull too hard on the hairs, the brush will lose its shape and become useless. You smooth the hairs back into a point and hang them from a wooden rack, tips pointing down so the water drains away. You wipe the pigment trays until they shine, and you cover the pots of glue to keep the dust out. The order of the workshop is restored, a clean slate for the morning. You feel a sense of completion, a closing of a circle that began with the morning mist. As you extinguish the last lamp, the workshop is plunged into a soft, velvety darkness. The only light comes from the moon outside, which looks remarkably like the one the master just painted. You slide the heavy wooden shutters closed, the sound a dull, comforting thud that signals the end of the day's responsibilities. You walk across the mats to your sleeping area, the straw-scented air filling your lungs. You think about the fans, sitting in the darkness on their racks, their colors slowly setting, their gold waiting for the first light of dawn. They are no longer just paper and bamboo. They are vessels for the stories and the light of the city. In the quiet of the night, you realize that your work with the pigments has changed the way you see the world. You no longer just see blue or white. You see the potential in a stone and the history in a shell. You see the way the light catches a surface and how a tiny bit of gold can change the entire mood of a room. This is the gift of the apprenticeship. It teaches you to look closer, to find the beauty in the small, the raw, and the hidden. You close your eyes, the image of the golden moon still burned into your eyelids. The world of Edo continues to turn outside, full of noise and ambition. But here, in the heart of the workshop, there is only the quiet rhythm of the drying paint and the promise of another day. You feel your muscles finally relax as you settle into your bedding. The coolness of the evening air is a perfect contrast to the warmth of the workshop. You think about the next step in the process, the assembly, the folding, and the final details that will turn these paintings into functional art. But that is a task for tomorrow. Tonight, you are content to let the colors rest. You are an apprentice, a color maker, and a witness to the beauty of the floating world. As you drift off to sleep, the faint scent of sandalwood and old paper lingers in the air, a final, soothing reminder of the work you love. The journey of the fan is nearly complete, and you have played your part with steady hands and a quiet heart. The morning light filters through the paper screens in a soft, diffused glow, turning the workshop into a chamber of pale amber. You wake with the first light, feeling a sense of anticipation that overrides the lingering sleepiness in your limbs. Today is the day the paintings are no longer just images on flat sheets of paper. They are about to become messages. In the world of Edo, a fan is never just a decoration. Every flower, every bird, and every ripple of water painted on its surface is a word in a silent language. You might think that choosing a fan is as simple as picking a pattern you like. But in the strict social hierarchies of 18th century Japan, carrying the wrong flower in the wrong month would be like wearing a winter coat to the beach. A social fox pass that would have everyone whispering behind their own, more appropriate fans. You probably believe that a plum blossom is just a pretty pink flower, but to a person of Edo, it is a brave herald of spring, a symbol of resilience that blooms while the snow is still on the ground. You move to the drying racks where the paintings from yesterday have settled into the paper. The pigments have dried to a matte, velvety finish, and the gold leaf glows with a subdued, dignified light. You pick up a sheet featuring a delicate arrangement of l'espadeza, or bush clover, its tiny purple blossoms trailing across the paper like drops of wine. This is a flower of autumn, a symbol of the melancholy beauty of the changing seasons. Historians still argue whether the complex system of seasonal floral motifs was a way for the merchant class to display their education or a genuine spiritual connection to the fleeting nature of life. But as you handle the paper, it feels like both. You are not just building a cooling tool. You are assembling a calendar that someone will carry in their sleeve. The first step in this stage is the application of the scent. A quirky or fringe tidbit that many people forget is that high, and fans were often lightly perfumed. You pick up a small wooden box containing tiny pellets of kneaded incense, a blend of sandalwood, clove, and a hint of musk. You don't rub the incense on the paper. That would be far too crude. Instead, you place the finished paintings in a closed lacquer chest with the incense for several hours. The paper, being porous and organic, drinks in the aroma until it becomes part of its very fibers. When the owner later opens the fan with a sharp snap, a tiny cloud of fragrance is released, creating a private atmosphere of elegance and calm. It is the Edo version of a personal signature scent, a subtle way to announce your presence without saying a word. If you think modern perfume commercials are dramatic, imagine the impact of a sandalwood-scented breeze in a crowded, humid theater. As the paper seasons in the scent chest, you turn your attention to the final details of the painting. The master has left a few areas for you to finish. The small, intricate veins on the leaves and the delicate stamens of the flowers. You use a brush that is so thin it consists of only 5 or 6 hairs from the neck of a rabbit. Your hand must be as steady as a mountain. You lean over the table, your chin almost touching the wood, and begin to draw a line that is barely visible to the naked eye. The sound of the brush is a microscopic hiss, a sound you feel more than hear. This is where the language of the fan truly comes to life. A vein that curves too sharply can change the mood of a leaf from vibrant to wilting. You are learning that in art, as in life, the smallest details are often the ones that carry the most weight. You think about the language of flowers, or Hanakotoba, which was deeply ingrained in the culture of the time. You are currently working on a series of fans featuring the 7 autumn flowers. These aren't the loud, showy blooms of summer. They are subtle, wild, and a bit rugged. There is the bellflower, which represents unchanging love, and the petrinia, which is often associated with the beauty of a woman. Carrying a fan with these images was a way of signaling one's refined taste and internal state. It is a bit like choosing a specific emoji or a profile picture today, only it requires a much deeper understanding of botany and classical poetry. You imagine a young man in a tea house, nervously adjusting his fan to show the bellflower side toward a girl he admires. It is a slow motion flirtation, one that relies on the shared knowledge of the workshop's art. The ironies of this seasonal language are everywhere. While the city is often hot and dirty, the fans depict a world of pristine nature and eternal grace. You are essentially creating a portable escape. A mainstream historical fact is that the Edo period saw a massive boom in the study of seasonal words, or kigo, used primarily in haiku poetry. The fans were the visual companions to these poems. When you paint a dragonfly, you are not just painting an insect, you are painting the spirit of autumn. When you paint a willow tree, you are invoking the coolness of a riverbank. You feel a sense of responsibility to get these symbols right. If you accidentally painted a summer cicada on an autumn fan, it would be a disaster, the artistic equivalent of a glaring typo in a love letter. You spend the next few hours working on a special commission, a fan depicting a single, stylized wave. This is a reference to the floating world, the idea that life is beautiful precisely because it is temporary. The wave is painted with the deep blue you ground yesterday, with white foam created from the ground oyster shells. You add a few tiny flecks of gold to represent the sun hitting the water. As you work, you find yourself thinking about the person who will eventually hold this fan. They will look at this wave while standing in a busy street or a crowded room, and for a second, they will be transported to the ocean. You are not just a craftsman, you are a travel agent for the imagination. The physical act of painting these small details is exhausting for the eyes. You have to take frequent breaks to look at the green trees in the garden, a technique the master taught you to refresh your vision. The contrast between the microscopic work on the table and the vast, moving world of the garden is a relief. You watch a real butterfly land on a real bush clover, and you realize how much the master's paintings have taught you to appreciate the real thing. Before you started this apprenticeship, a flower was just a flower. Now it is a complex architecture of color, light, and meaning. You see the world in layers now. The base color, the shading, the fine lines, and the final shimmer of gold. A light joke among the workshop staff is that you can tell how long an apprentice has been working by how many accidental flowers they have on their own clothes. You look down and see a small, perfect red dot on your sleeve where you dropped a bit of cinnabar. Instead of washing it out, you decide to leave it, a tiny, secret blossom that only you know the meaning of. It is a reminder that the work you do is never truly separate from who you are. The colors and the symbols of the fans are starting to inhabit your thoughts and even your dreams. You find yourself categorizing the clouds you see in the sky according to whether they would look better in gold leaf or silver dust. As the afternoon progresses, you begin the process of mounting the finished paintings onto the bamboo skeletons you prepared. This is the moment of truth. You apply a thin layer of the fermented persimmon juice glue to the ribs, the sour, fruity smell filling your nostrils once again. You then carefully align the paper with the wood. It is a nerve-wracking process. If the paper is even slightly crooked, the message of the painting will be distorted when the fan is opened. You use your fingers to smooth the paper down, feeling the hard ridges of the bamboo beneath the soft surface of the washi. It is like putting skin over bone. The fan suddenly has a body, a weight, and a function. You perform the first test fold of a newly mounted fan. You move slowly, guiding the paper into its pre-creased lines. You hear a series of soft, rhythmic clicks as the bamboo ribs settle into place. It is a beautiful sound, the sound of a successful marriage between nature and art. You open the fan fully, and for the first time, you see the painting as it was meant to be seen. Curved, textured, and alive. The bush clover seems to move as the paper bends, giving the flowers a sense of life that they didn't have when the sheet was flat. This is the magic of the fan. It is art that requires movement to be complete. You think about the scholarly debates that still happen today regarding the gender of certain fan designs. Some historians argue that bold, geometric patterns were strictly for men, while delicate florals were for women. However, looking at the orders in the master's ledger, you see that the reality was much more fluid. A samurai might carry a fan with delicate cherry blossoms to show his appreciation for the transience of life, while a wealthy merchant woman might choose a bold, masculine landscape to show her power. The language of the fan was subtle enough to allow for these personal expressions, providing a way to navigate the rigid social codes of the time with a bit of individual flair. The light in the workshop begins to shift toward the golden hour of the late afternoon. This is when the gold leaf on the fans truly comes to life, catching the low rays of the sun and glowing with an internal fire. You set the finished fans out on a long wooden table to let the glue set completely. Looking at them all together, they look like a field of fallen petals or a flock of colorful birds. Each one carries a different message, a different season, and a different mood. You feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You have helped create a library of silent poetry, a collection of objects that will help people express things they might not have the words for. A quirky detail you notice is that the master always signs his work in a very specific spot, hidden near the base of the outermost rib. It is a tiny, elegant mark that most people would never notice. It is a sign of humility, a statement that the art is more important than the artist. You hope that one day you will be skilled enough to leave your own hidden mark on a fan. For now, you are content to be the one who ensures the ink is dry and the scent is right. You are the custodian of the details, the one who makes sure the language is spoken clearly and without mistakes. As you prepare to close the workshop for the evening, you pick up one of the fans, a simple one with a painting of a single pine branch. You open it and give yourself a gentle breeze. The air that hits your face is cool, scented with sandalwood and the faint smell of the mulberry paper. It is a moment of pure, simple luxury. You realize that this is why people in Edo love these objects so much. In a world that can be harsh, loud, and demanding, a fan provides a small, private pocket of beauty and comfort. It is a piece of art you can hold in your hand, a message you can carry in your pocket. You think about the fans that will leave the workshop tomorrow, headed for the markets of Nihonbashi and the elegant homes of the city. They will be opened at weddings, at funerals, at festivals, and in the quiet moments of daily life. They will be used to hide tears, to emphasize a joke, and to cool a fever. The language of flowers you have meticulously applied to the paper will become part of someone else's story. You feel a sense of connection to all those future moments, a feeling that your work is a bridge across time and space. The sun finally dips below the horizon, and the workshop is once again filled with shadows. You walk through the room one last time, checking the tension on the drying paper and making sure the scent chest is tightly closed. The silence of the room is heavy and peaceful, a contrast to the busy language of the fans you have been immersed in all day. You feel a sense of exhaustion, but it is a good kind of tired, the fatigue of someone who has spent their day translating beauty into a form that others can understand. You realize that learning the language of the Edo fan is like learning to see the world through a different set of eyes. You no longer see the seasons as just weather. You see them as a series of symbols and emotions. You no longer see paper and wood as just materials. You see them as a vessel for light and scent. This is the true gift of your apprenticeship. You are learning to read the hidden messages in everything around you. As you settle into your mats for the night, the image of the purple bush clover remains in your mind, a silent, beautiful word in the ongoing story of your life in the workshop. The journey of the fan is almost complete, and you are ready for the final step, knowing that you have done your best to make the message clear. The night is deep and the city of Edo has finally settled into a quiet hum. but your mind is still wandering through the refined corridors of polite society. You imagine yourself not as the dusty apprentice of the workshop, but as a silent observer at a high-ranking tea ceremony or a formal gathering at the shogun's palace. In these spaces, the fan you have spent days crafting transforms from a cooling tool into a sophisticated instrument of social navigation. You probably believe that a fan is just something you wave around when you're sweating. But in a formal Edo setting, waving a fan around too vigorously would be considered as shocking as shouting at the top of your lungs in a library. You have to learn the etiquette of the object, the subtle, unwritten rules that govern how it is held, when it is opened, and where it is placed. It is a world where a single inch of movement can mean the difference between being seen as a cultured scholar or a complete social disaster. You visualize the interior of a traditional tea house, where the air is thick with the scent of high-grade matcha and the walls are decorated with a single, perfect scroll. In this environment, the fan serves as a symbolic shield. When you sit on the tatami mats to greet a host, you don't just bow. You place your closed fan horizontally on the mat in front of your knees. This creates a small, physical boundary that represents your humility and respect. It is a way of saying, I am keeping my personal space separate from yours to show you honor. Historians still argue whether this specific use of the fan as a social barrier originated from the samurai tradition of placing one's sword aside, or if it was an independent evolution of tea ceremony etiquette designed to foster a sense of equality within the room. Either way, the fan you made with such care is now serving as a silent diplomat, negotiating the delicate balance of human interaction. The physical sensation of using a fan in a formal setting is one of extreme restraint. You don't snap the fan open with a flourish unless you are a kabuki actor trying to make a dramatic point. Instead, you use both hands, sliding the fan open one fold at a time, a motion as smooth and quiet as water flowing over a stone. The sound of the paper sliding against the bamboo ribs is a soft, rhythmic whisper that barely disturbs the silence of the room. A mainstream historical fact is that the number of ribs in a fan often dictated its formality. A fan with fewer, thicker ribs was considered more casual, while a fan with many thin, delicate ribs was the height of sophistication. You think back to the hours you spent splitting that bamboo in Section 3, realizing now that the thinner you carved those ribs, the more status you were giving to the person who would eventually hold the fan. Your physical labor was directly contributing to someone's social standing. You imagine the subtle fan talk that happens during a garden party. If a lady holds her fan half closed against her chin, she might be signaling a quiet interest. If a merchant taps his closed fan against the palm of his hand, he is likely impatient or deep in calculation. It is a complex, non-verbal vocabulary that everyone in Edo society is expected to read fluently. A quirky or fringe tidbit that sounds almost like a spy novel is that certain high-ranking officials actually had fans with secret compartments or tiny mirrors hidden within the folds, allowing them to keep an eye on what was happening behind them without ever turning their heads. You wonder if the master has ever been asked to create such a gadget fan, and you smile at the thought of a samurai using a piece of art to conduct a bit of 18th century surveillance. It gives a whole new meaning to the idea of a folding fan. It's not just the paper that's hiding things. As the imaginary party continues, you notice the way the light catches the gold leaf you applied in section 4. In the dim candle-lit rooms of Edo, the gold doesn't just look pretty, it acts as a light source. As the person moves the fan, the gold reflects the flickering candle flames, sending small flashes of light dancing across their face and the surrounding walls. It creates a sense of movement and life even in a still room. You realize that you weren't just making a fan. You were making a portable lighting fixture. The irony is that the more expensive the fan looks, the less it is actually used for its intended purpose of moving air. In the highest circles, the fan is an accessory of the mind, a way to frame one's thoughts and gestures. If you think your modern smartphone is a versatile multi-tool, it has nothing on the Edo fan, which manages to be a weapon, a map, a light, a shield, and a dictionary of flowers all at the same time. The etiquette extends even to how the fan is stored when not in use. You don't just toss it on a table. It is tucked carefully into the obi, the wide silk belt, at a specific angle that indicates the wearer's rank and readiness. For a samurai, the fan is often tucked on the opposite side of his swords, creating a visual balance between the power to take life and the power to create beauty. This balance is central to the Edo identity, the way of the warrior and the way of the arts intertwined. You feel a sense of pride knowing that your workshop provides the beauty, half of that equation. Without the fan, the samurai is just a man with a sword. With the fan, he is a man of culture and restraint. You find yourself standing a bit straighter in your imaginary silk kimono, feeling the phantom weight of the fan against your hip. It is a weight of responsibility, a reminder to move through the world with grace. A light joke often told among those who have to endure these long ceremonies is that the fan is the only thing keeping them from falling over from boredom. When the speeches go on too long or the tea takes forever to brew, you can focus on the painting on your fan, tracing the lines of the cherry blossoms or the curves of the waves with your eyes. It is a private, portable gallery that only you can see. You imagine a young apprentice like yourself, hidden in the back of a formal room, using his fan to hide a yawn, while a local official drones on about rice taxes. The fan is the ultimate social cloak, allowing you to maintain a perfect, polite exterior while your mind is miles away, perhaps thinking about the roasted chestnuts in Nihonbashi or the cool water of the workshop's garden. The scholarly debates regarding fan etiquette often focus on the transition between seasons. Just as you learned about the language of flowers in Section 5, there are strict rules about when you must switch from your spring fan to your summer fan. Doing so even a day too early or too late would be noticed by everyone in the room. It is a culture of hyper-awareness, where everyone is constantly scanning everyone else for small clues of character and education. You realize that the work you do in the workshop, the constant checking of the glue, the precision of the folds, the accuracy of the floral motifs, is what allows people to survive this intense social scrutiny. You are the one providing them with the correct answers to a social exam they are taking every single day. If you mess up a single petal on a chrysanthemum, you might be responsible for someone's subtle social humiliation. No pressure, right? As the night air cools your real workshop, you think about the fans that are used in the theater. In kabuki and no, the fan is a powerful storyteller. An actor can use a fan to represent a bottle of sake, a falling leaf, a rising sun, or even a rolling severed head, all without saying a single word. The audience is so well versed in the language of the fan that they can follow the entire plot just by watching how the actor opens and closes the object. This is the ultimate expression of the fan's power. It is a tool that can turn a single person on a bare stage into an entire world. You feel a deep connection to those actors, knowing that the props they use are the result of your hard work. When an actor successfully conveys the tragedy of a falling blossom using a fan from your workshop, a little bit of your soul is up there on stage with him. The irony of the polite fan is that it is often a cover for intense emotion. In a society where you are rarely allowed to show anger, grief, or even extreme joy on your face, the fan becomes the outlet. A fan snapped shut with a slightly too loud click can convey more fury than a shouted insult. A fan held trembling against the eyes can signal a grief that words cannot reach. You are crafting the vessels for these hidden emotions, the physical objects that people use to hold their feelings when they can't let them out. It makes the work feel much more intimate. You aren't just making a commodity. You are making a companion for the most private moments of a person's life. You think about the uchiwa, or flat fans again, the ones used by the common people in the markets of Nihonbashi. Even those have their own etiquette. While they aren't used in formal tea ceremonies, there is still a right way to use them. You don't fan yourself toward other people, as that would be like blowing your dust on them. Instead, you fan toward your own chest, creating a private circle of cool air. Even in the busiest, dirtiest parts of the city, there is an attempt to maintain a sense of decorum and respect for others. The fan is a constant reminder of this shared social contract. It is an object that encourages you to be mindful of your body and your impact on the space around you. As you prepare to finally drift off to sleep, you imagine the final assembly of the fans you worked on today. You will add the small, silk tassels to the base of the most expensive ones, a final touch of luxury that serves no practical purpose other than to look beautiful as they sway in the breeze. These tassels are like the punctuation marks at the end of a long, elegant sentence. They signal that the work is truly finished, and the message is ready to be delivered. You feel a sense of completion, knowing that the fans you have created will soon be out in the world, doing their silent work of negotiation and storytelling. The journey through the social world of Edo has shown you that beauty is never just beauty. It is a language, a shield, and a bridge. You are lucky to be a part of the process that creates it. The workshop, with its smells of glue and wood, is the foundation upon which this entire complex social structure is built. Without the apprentice's steady hand and the master's vision, the polite society of Edo would have nothing to hold on to. You close your eyes, the rhythm of the imaginary tea ceremony fading into the real silence of the workshop. The city of Edo is a place of endless rules and subtle meanings, but you have found your place within it, one fold at a time. You realize that the fan is a metaphor for the human heart, folded and hidden most of the time, revealing its true beauty and purpose only when it is opened with care and respect. This thought brings a smile to your face as you settle deeper into your bedding. the world of Edo will wake up tomorrow and start its complicated dance all over again. And you will be there to provide the fans that make the dance possible. You are the silent partner in every conversation, the hidden observer in every tea room, and the craftsman behind every graceful gesture. It is a good life, full of meaning and art. The shadows on the wall seem to bow to you as the oil in the lamp finally runs dry. The darkness is total now, but you don't mind. You can still see the fans in your mind's eye, glowing with gold and scented with sandalwood, waiting to be opened by hands you will never meet. They are your legacy, your contribution to the history of this great, busy city. As you finally drift into a deep, dreamless sleep, the last thing you hear is the faint, imaginary snap of a fan opening, a sound of relief, beauty, and perfect, polite grace. The morning of the final day arrives with a gentle, persistent rain that patters against the roof tiles like 1,000 tiny drum beats. Inside the workshop, the air is cool and damp, a stark contrast to the dry heat of the pigment preparation. You move through the space with a quiet, slow motion grace, your movements dictated by the needs of the objects around you. This is the moment of finality. The fans have been painted, scented, and assembled, but they are still vulnerable to survive the passage of time, to go from a temporary cooling tool to a historical treasure. They must undergo one last process of preservation. You might think that once the art is done, the work is over, but in the world of Edo, finishing is just the beginning of enduring. You probably believe that these fragile slips of paper and wood were destined to crumble after a single summer, but through a mixture of chemistry and careful storage, some of them will outlive dynasties. You sit before the drying rack, where the fans are held partially open by small wooden pegs. This allows the various layers of glue, pigment, and persimmon juice to breathe and settle into their final form. Your task today is to apply the final protective coating to the bamboo ribs, a mixture of high-quality vegetable wax and a touch of camellia oil. You take a small, lint-free cloth and begin to rub the wood. The motion is repetitive and soothing, a rhythmic back and forth that generates a faint, pleasant heat. As the oil sinks into the grain, the bamboo takes on a deep, lustrous sheen that highlights every minute fiber. You split back in section 3. The scent of the camellia oil is light and floral, mixing with the fading sandalwood incense to create a complex, clean aroma that feels like the very essence of a peaceful home. A mainstream historical fact that underscores the importance of this moment is that Edo period fans were often treated as family heirlooms, passed down from generation to generation, or given as significant wedding gifts. Because of this, the preservation process wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about ensuring the family's legacy remained intact. You feel the weight of this responsibility in your hands. If you apply too much oil, the paper might become stained, too little, and the wood might crack in the dry winter air. It is a balance of moisture and protection, a theme that seems to run through everything you've learned this year. You are essentially armor, plating a butterfly, trying to protect something inherently delicate without crushing its spirit. If you think your modern archival storage boxes are sophisticated, you should see the layered lacquer chests and silk wraps used to keep these fans safe from the humidity of a Japanese June. As you work, your mind wanders to the scholars of the future. Historians still argue whether the extreme longevity of certain Edo fans is due more to the secret recipes of the persimmon juice treatments or to the ritualistic care with which the owners handled them. You suspect it is a bit of both. You've seen how people in the city treat their fans, not as disposable items, but as extensions of their own bodies. You think about the crocodile dung sunscreen we joked about in previous journeys. Compared to that, the persimmon juice treatment is a miracle of organic engineering. It keeps the paper flexible, repels insects, and creates a barrier against the damp. You are participating in a tradition of preservation that relies on the natural world to fight the natural world's own decay. It is a slow, quiet battle, fought with oils and waxes instead of swords. A quirky or fringe tidbit that always makes you laugh is that some collectors were so obsessed with preserving the snap of their fans that they would store them in special boxes filled with specific types of dried leaves intended to regulate humidity to a precise degree. It was essentially an 18th century humidor for art. You imagine a wealthy merchant fussing over his fan collection like a gardener over a prize bonsai tree, checking the moisture levels and re-scenting the silk linings every month. It seems a bit excessive, but then you look at the fan in your hand, the one with the golden moon and the deep blue sky, and you realize you would do the same. When you've seen the effort that goes into a single brushstroke, you understand why people would go to such lengths to keep it from fading. The rain outside begins to taper off, leaving the garden dripping and vibrant. The light shifts again, becoming clearer and more silver. You finish the last rib and set the fan down, taking a moment to look at your hands. They are no longer covered in the dark charcoal of the first morning or the bright minerals of the afternoon. They are simply clean and slightly oily from the wax. They are the hands of someone who has seen a process from start to finish. You realize that the legacy you are preserving isn't just the physical fan, but the knowledge of how to make it. Every motion you've mastered, every mistake you've corrected, is a thread in a tapestry that stretches back centuries and forward into a future you can't yet see. You are a bridge between the forest, where the bamboo grew, and the museum, where the fan might one day sit behind glass. You begin to wrap the finished fans in thin, acidic, free paper for their journey back to the merchant's shop. This is a delicate operation, requiring you to fold the paper around the fan without creating any new creases. You move with a deliberate slowness, your breathing even and calm. The workshop is silent now, the master having gone to rest in the inner rooms. You are alone with the fruits of your labor. The fans look like sleeping birds in their white paper cocoons, waiting for their moment to fly. You feel a strange sense of loss, knowing that by tomorrow evening they will be gone, carried away into the busy streets of Edo. But there is also a sense of pride. You have taken raw materials and, through patience and discipline, turned them into something that has the potential to be timeless. The irony of your craft is that the more successful you are, the less people think about the work. A perfectly preserved fan looks like it was made yesterday, hiding the decades of care and the centuries of tradition behind its fresh appearance. You find yourself thinking about the floating world one last time. If everything is temporary, then the act of preservation is a beautiful, stubborn rebellion against that reality. You are trying to hold on to a moment of beauty, to freeze a single cherry blossom in time, so that someone else can enjoy it 100 years from now. It is a hopeful act, a gesture of faith in the future. As you slide the final fan into its silk sleeve, you feel a deep, resonant peace. You have done your part. The shadows of the afternoon begin to stretch across the workshop floor, marking the passage of the final hours of your journey. You take a slow walk through the room, tidying the tools one last time. The whetstones are dry, the brushes are clean, and the pigment bowls are stacked neatly. The workshop feels like a temple in the twilight, a place of ritual and devotion. You look at the empty space where the bamboo bundle once sat, and the spot where the master's lamp flickered during the long nights of painting. The story of the fan is etched into the very walls of this room. You are no longer the nervous apprentice who worried about dust. You are a part of the workshop's own history. You have earned your place in the quiet lineage of Edo craftsmen as you prepare to step out of the narrative and back into your own world. You take one last breath of the workshop air. It smells of wood, wax, and the faint, lingering sweetness of the persimmon glue. It is a scent you will never forget, a sensory anchor that will always bring you back to this moment of calm and creation. The city of Edo is still out there, moving at its own frantic pace, but here, in the heart of the workshop, time has a different rhythm. It is the rhythm of the seasons, the rhythm of the brush, and the rhythm of the human heart. You are ready to close the door, knowing that the fans you helped create are ready for their own long journey through the centuries. The world around you is beginning to fade into a soft, indistinct blur, much like the edges of a watercolor painting. The sounds of the workshop, the rhythmic rubbing of the wax, the soft patter of the rain, the distant temple bell, all blend into a single, soothing hum that wraps around you like a heavy, warm blanket. Your breathing has become slow and shallow, a natural reflection of the deep peace you've found in the quiet heart of Edo. There is nothing left to do, no more pigments to grind, no more bamboo to split. The work is finished, and the fans are safe. You can feel the weight of the day lifting off your shoulders, replaced by a lightness that makes you feel as though you are floating on a calm, dark river. The images of the golden moon and the purple bush clover are still there, behind your closed eyelids, but they are softer now, glowing with a light that doesn't demand your attention. They are like distant stars, guiding you toward a deep and restorative sleep. You are safe in your own space, far from the noise and the deadlines of the modern world. The history of the fan is a gentle whisper in your ear, a reminder that beauty persists and that patience is always rewarded. You can let go of the day now, allowing yourself to sink into the plush, welcoming darkness. The story has reached its end, and you have played your part perfectly. Your thoughts are drifting, like the tiny gold flecks of the sunago dust, settling slowly and quietly into the stillness of the night. There is no rush, no urgency, just the steady, rhythmic pulse of the world at rest. You are a part of the timeless cycle of creation and rest, a witness to the beauty that emerges when we take our time. Let the warmth of the stories carry you away. Everything is exactly as it should be. The workshop is quiet, the city is asleep, and you are free to dream.